right. We are in Esther 9. Ooh, it's shifty. We're calling this one Victory and Remembrance. This is our last week in Esther. Who's been here all through Esther? You win something. I don't know. Respect. You win my respect. That's all I have for you. It's worthless. All right. So in Esther, last time was chapter 8. We're going to take 9 and 10 tonight because 10 is super short. So last week in chapter 8, Mordecai writes this letter to all the Jews in the Persian Empire. Do you remember? This feels like Sunday school. Do you remember what he told them? Nope. I lost my bookmark. Where's Esther? Shoot. Yes, that they could defend themselves. Very good. Yes, thank you for speaking publicly. Yes, that they could defend themselves. So remember in the very beginning, right, the problem that we've been dealing with this whole time is that the letter went out from Haman, right, that anybody's kind of like this purge day and anybody could attack them. Do you remember this? Just say yes. Okay. And so then the response, remember they couldn't just say never mind because it was a letter with the king's seal on it, right? And so in Persia, you can't retract a law from the king, so they had to add a second law to kind of put the law's intention. And so the other law was, well, we can fight back, we can defend ourselves. And so that's what's gone out. And remember, it's the specific day. So they're waiting on this day, and on this day, it all goes down, and we get our brass knuckles, and everybody kind of lines up in the street, and we do our thing. So that's it's been heading towards. All right. What's interesting, we'll talk about it a little bit tonight. I just want to make sure you remember it because I don't know that we remember everything, is that it says that for fear of the Jews, many declared themselves Jews. And that's going to be important tonight. So I just want you to put that back on your brain shelf. And we're going to take a look in chapter 9. We will start with, we'll just take kind of the first section. We're going to talk a little bit about violence. So Esther 9, let me pray, and then we'll start reading. Lord, we put our night before you. We thank you. We praise you, and we thank you that we're here. We pray, Lord, that you would open up your scripture for us tonight, that you'd speak through me tonight, and we pray that you would be bigger, and we would see you more fully as a result of Esther 9 and 10. Amen. All right. It says, now in the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, in the 13th day of the same, when the king's command and edict were about to be carried out, on the very day when the enemies of the Jews hoped to gain the mastery over them, the reverse occurred. The Jews gained mastery over those who hated them. The Jews gathered in their cities throughout the provinces of King Ahasuerus to lay hands on those who sought their harm, and no one could stand against them, for the fear of them had fallen on all peoples. All the officials of the provinces and the satraps and the governors and the royal agents also helped the Jews, for fear of Mordecai had fallen on them. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame spread throughout all the provinces. For the man Mordecai grew more and more powerful. The Jews struck all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them, and did as they pleased to those who hated them. In Susa, the citadel itself, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men, and also killed, Parshandatha and Dalphon and Aspatha and Paratha and Adalia and Aridatha and Parmashta and Arisai and Aridai and Vaisatha, the 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hamadatha. I think they like Athas, the enemy of the Jews, but they laid no hand on the plunder. That very day, the number of those killed in Susa the citadel was reported to the king, and the king said to Queen Esther, in Susa the citadel, the Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men, and also the 10 sons of Haman. What then have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, what is your wish? It shall be granted you. And what further is your request? It shall be fulfilled. And Esther said, if it please the king, let the Jews who are in Susa be allowed tomorrow also to do according to this day's edict, and let the 10 sons of Haman be hanged on the gallows. So the king commanded this to be done. A decree was issued in Susa, and the 10 sons of Haman were hanged. The Jews who were in Susa gathered also on the 14th day of the month of Adar, and they killed 300 men in Susa, but they laid no hands on the plunder. Now the rest of the Jews who were in the king's provinces also gathered to defend their lives and got relief from their enemies and killed 75,000 of those who hated them, but they laid no hands on the plunder. This was on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day they rested and made that day a day of feasting and gladness. But the Jews who were in Susa gathered on the 13th day and on the 14th, and rested on the 15th day. making that a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore, the Jews of the villages who live in the rural towns hold the 14th day of the month of Adar as a day for gladness and feasting, as a holiday, and as a day on which they send gifts of food to one another. Okay. Rough passage, weird passage. It's like, let's stab people. You stabbed a lot of people. What do you want? I want to stab more people. Like, this is kind of, it's a little bit uncomfortable. And so for some of you, for others of you, so there's a spectrum, right? Some of you are like, yes, Bible, stabbing. We need more stabbing in our world. Like, stab people, that's the solution. I'm ready to stab someone right now. So there's that. And then there's like, well, I don't think God likes stabbing, so I'm going to say hugging. We're going to hug the people. We hugged 75,000 people today, right? And there's sort of like some of us get squeamish about this, and the rest of us get really excited in a creepy way about this. And then we could say, well, is it then in the middle, right? Is it a lot of stabbing, no stabbing, like some stabbing? Like, what is the right amount of stabbing? And I don't think it's necessarily that. So I want to talk a little bit about violence in the Bible because it's a common thing. And here we have this story, and there's not much commentary. And this is very common, right? And the Bible will say, and this happened. And you're like, okay, good thing or bad thing? And the Bible will go, well, it happened. And it doesn't always explain very fully. And so we have to kind of take the breadth of the Bible, and we have to understand some of the principles that we're seeing. And so I want to make note of violence in the Bible. And we're going to say it's three things. One is it's limited, it's protective, and it's authoritative. It's limited. In the Old Testament, where there's the most stabbing, right? There's actually, God will put parameters around it. So let's start with here. In Esther, what are the parameters around this? It's on this day, and whom do they get to stab? I guess it's not always stabbing. I don't know what they were doing, but like, it's probably stabbing, right? Who do they get to attack? Only those who are after them, right? Only the aggressors, okay? It's not just stab everybody, it's stab these people. So when you hear 75,000, it sounds like a lot of people. What we're talking about is the entire Persian Empire. That is nothing in the Persian Empire, right? This is most of the Near East and then some, okay? And so it's focused on their enemies who are ready to attack them or are attacking them. It's a little unclear on if it's how preemptive it is and how responsive it is, but it's focused on them. In the Old Testament, this is the Old Testament as well, in Numbers, when the people are, in Deuteronomy, when they're coming out of the wilderness, God starts to outline for them which people groups they should treat how. And he kind of gives 3 tiers of how they should treat different groups around them. And the first is like, be friends with these people because they blessed you. If you remember in Genesis 12, it's bless those who bless you and I have cursed those who curse you. So it's like, these people groups, be nice to them, make friends with them. These people groups kind of be a little bit like, it's kind of a middle ground, like kind of don't be friends. You can kind of like, defend yourself, but there's kind of this middle category. And then there's a few people groups where it's like, no, do not be friends with them. And then there's one group, the Canaanites, where it's like, go in and you have to destroy them, okay? And so it's always focused, right? It's always a focused thing. God does not in the Bible just go, I just love stabbing, go kill people. I have this bloodlust, which is significant because of a lot of the ancient gods at the time, the false gods that people worshipped, that is how they worshipped them. They had this bloodlust. They sacrifice people to me and go kill people. It was very, very much more open-ended violence. So first, it's limited. Second is it's protective. In Exodus 22, there's a law that if a thief breaks in the night into your house and you kill them, you can't be held liable for that. So there's this self-protective principle there in the Bible. And even Jesus, this gets a little bit debated, you should understand that, but Jesus in Luke 22 talks about bringing money bags on this trip and a sack and a sword and a cloak, right? So why the sword? Well, people have said, oh, it's spiritual protection. That's not I don't know if it's a spiritual backpack. That's a spiritual cloak. That sounds kind of weird. So I think it's a real sword, right? And we see even in Nehemiah, they're building the wall. They have a sword on, and then they're building with one hand and with a sword in the other hand. So there's something protective. Why protective? Because God cares about people, and God cares about what is just and right. We live in a broken world. Because we live in a broken world, God's solutions are not necessarily the ideal design, but they are God's best. They are God's best purpose for us in the broken world. Do you kind of see how that could work? It shouldn't be that any of us ever need to stab anybody else ever. That should never be the case. But because the world is broken, God adds laws in to make sure that people are protected and make sure that we can function in a broken world according to his will. Do you see this? Just say yes. Because even if you say no, I can't stop and explain it any further. I can after. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to chat. So it's limited, it's about protecting people, and it's authoritative. So Romans 13 talks about the government that bears the sword for your good. That there's an actual group of people that we go, oh, we will let these people have, I don't know what they have anymore. Like, these people can have this giant thing that puts tear gas in your house, and like, okay, because we want you to have it, I probably shouldn't have that, but like, maybe you should have that. And we could argue that, and you could be like, Second Amendment, or you could do the whole thing. That's not the point. It's not a political thing. It's just, throughout time, we have said, we will put government authority to take care of people, and that there'll be an authoritative violence. Genesis 9:6 is often where Bible scholars say this began, where it says, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image. And often we look at that as kind of the genesis of this idea of government and the government ability to say, we'll bring justice in an unjust world, sometimes through the use of violence. But again, limited, protective, and authoritative, not open-ended. So those who just want to stab everybody, we don't stab everybody. Those who just want to hug their way through life, you're going to die. You don't want to do that. It's not safe, right? So it's not also in the middle. It's not just the middle. Maybe we should stab only some people. Sometimes God gives a parameter around what we're seeing here. If you have questions about that, if that freaks you out, I can chat further with you after. Okay. There was a phrase that was repeated over and over in here, which was, they did not take the plunder. And I think there's a couple things going on. Number one, they were allowed to in the letter. So in the letter that Mordecai wrote, it says that they can take these people's possessions, but they don't. Which is really, really interesting, because if the letter said they could, we don't see any other communication that across the empire they're all hearing, oh, but we're not going to. That doesn't seem to get communicated. So I actually think there's some pretty powerful stuff happening here. I think it's the Lord that's moving in them at this point, because again, they can't communicate broadly, and yet they're doing what's not in the letter. So the plunder, right? Why is it important? Let me give you two levels, one simple and one Bible nerdy. Okay, we're going to go simple first. So if you're like, I'm on simple level with you, you'll like this one, and then you can not pay attention for a second. If you want more, I'll go more. Okay, simple level. Simple level is, I think they're above board. This isn't about the money. It's about self-protection. So whether or not I don't know if they went, oh man, Mordecai wrote this in there, but we don't think that's a good idea. We don't think the aftermath of that is going to work out. We don't think if we kill these attackers and take their possessions, that's going to look good or play well or give us good reputation or even just be moral before the Lord. I'm not sure. It doesn't really explain it, but I think that could very well be kind of on the surface level. We don't want to, this isn't about that. This is about us protecting ourselves. We're going to keep it to that. We're not going to take everything from them. But let me give you a deeper level. Throughout the Old Testament, really throughout the Bible, there's this kind of, not secret, but just subtle, that's the word I want. There's this subtle theme that God's people are never to swindle, lie to, cheat, take from those who are not God's people. There's this relationship at play between the Jews, God's people, and the Gentiles who are not. And so it's always wrong for them to go and take from them. When Abraham lies about Sarah not being his wife, the Pharaoh gives wealth for Abraham to leave after Abraham's lie brings a curse in Genesis. So he gives it to him. You leave. So there's also this theme of the nations giving, but the Jews are never to steal. I'm going somewhere with this. So if you're like, I don't like this is boring, I will get somewhere with this. When the king of Sodom offers Abraham wealth, Abraham refuses to be made wealthy by the nations at the expense of God's glory. So he at that point, he doesn't want to take from the rest of the nations. This guy Abimelech, or the king Abimelech, gives wealth for Abraham to leave after Abraham's lie brings a curse. We actually see this kind of as a rotating theme. This happens several times. The Egyptians give their treasure to the Hebrews, but what's interesting in the Exodus is the Hebrews have to come and ask for it, right? It actually says, go and ask them, get them. You go like receive it from them, but don't go take and steal. The Queen of Sheba brings tribute to Israel. So the nations start bringing in this wealth to God's people. Here you go, this gift. If you remember this story, Ahab takes a vineyard, and the person he takes it from, one of the interesting things is Ahab is a Israelite king. He takes it from somebody who's not of Israel, and this seems to be part of what's going on with Elijah condemning Ahab. And then Elisha punishes his servant at one point because he tries to lie to a Syrian general and get payment for the miraculous healing that came from Elisha. And then the temple we see in Babylon is ransacked. The nations come and they take Israel's stuff. And so when Israel's really in trouble with the Lord, what happens, the punishment is that he allows the reverse flow. The nations come and take from them. We see, the Magi bring gifts to Jesus. We see Jesus, when he cleanses the temple, he's driving out the swindlers, he's driving out the liars, he's driving out these people who would take from all these people visiting Jerusalem. And then in the New Jerusalem, it says that the kings of the nations bring their glory into Jerusalem. They all bring what they have. They all bring it in. So there's this theme throughout the Bible. So when we look at Esther, this is a little Bible nerdy, I know, but when we look at Esther, I think what you're also seeing here is you're seeing this instance of God going, no, wait, that's not what this is about. Yes, I know there's stabbing, and you're like, how could God be about that? Again, God's about protection and God's about justice, even if that requires something drastic at times. But what we also see, they refuse to take. They refuse to make it about how they can enrich themselves and what they can get out of this. Because I really think what God is doing, big picture, Old Testament, big picture, is he's saying, same thing he said to Abraham, I'm going to bless you so that you will bless all the nations of the earth, or all the families of the earth. I'm going to bless you that you may be a blessing. I'm going to give to you so that you can give. Yes, the people of God will receive, and sometimes the nations bring things to them, but God is saying, you never take from them. If you remember David, he sinned with Bathsheba, and then he killed Bathsheba's husband. Bathsheba's husband is always called, do you know what he's called? Always? Uriah the Hittite, the not your people, right? The not God's people. And so part of it, I think, is not just that he murdered somebody. He didn't represent God. The people are supposed to be this beacon, this city on a hill, this light, and now he's misrepresenting God to the nations, taking from them. Okay, why do I do this? Why are we getting Bible nerdy? What is this about? Because I really think what's happening here is this little glimpse, this little instance of God working his will, where there's been the book starts with such a complete risk, a complete brokenness between his people, the Jews, and the rest of the empire, the rest of the world, the Persians and everybody else, right? There's this huge rift because let's kill them all. That's how we kind of start things. Let's kill all of the Jews in all of Persia, which is most of the Near East, which is most of the Jews in the entire world at the time. Let's kill them all. That's kind of how things begin. And so by the end, we're going to put a stop to that. And not only that, this kind of beginning weird relationship happens where they're not taking from them. And more than that, in chapter 8, it says many joined with the Jews, or many of these people wanted to, it's kind of a little subtle how it says it, but it says for fear of them, they made themselves Jews. And so we don't know how far they went. There was different stages of like how Jewish you could become, and did you follow the Sabbath only, or did you get circumcised, or, how much of it did you walk into? We don't know. That's not the point that the Bible's trying to make about how much. The Bible is saying, even if for fear of them, they come and they join them. Can you think of, Bible quiz time, can you think of anybody in the book of Joshua who does a very similar thing? I'll give you a point. Rahab. I don't know who said that, but you were correct. You get a point somewhere over here. Yes. Rahab, same thing, right? We've heard of you. We've heard how scary you are. We've heard you're this conquering tribe that's coming in, right? We've heard of that. And so what does she do? She and her family, they say, okay, go get your family. Her and her family, they come and they join them, and she ends up in Jesus's genealogy, in his genealogical line, by name, one of the few women in there, really amazing. And so there's this God is always, so yes, you can be like, wow, this God is having them stab people. I'm uncomfortable with that. Well, God's real heart of what's going on is call everybody in. Call all the peoples in. Call all the nations in. Why are Tyler and McCall going to Thailand? Because God has called all peoples into his people. And most of us, myself included, despite the rumors, am not Jewish. And so I am one of those peoples. At some point, God's like, call the French Canadians in. And I was like, yes, let's go. And when God calls whoever your peoples are, when he calls those peoples in, he then says, okay, now you do the same. You take up that same role that Israel had to everybody else, and you go invite, you go call, you go warn, you go be an example. And so this is what I think we're seeing here in Esther, something deeper than just what's on the surface. Okay. All right. In verse 20, we're going to look at, oh, yes. Oh, I missed it. You know what? This is nerdy. If you're interested in that, this is what I nerd out on. I have tons of examples. If you're like, I really want to know more, what are the examples, Andrew? I will tell you, but I will tell you later. So we will keep going. We're going to, because my time always, there's a time warp. The second I walk on stage, time goes faster. So we're not going to do it. All right, let's keep reading. So 9 verse 20 says, and Mordecai recorded these things and sent letters to all the Jews who were in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, both near and far, obliging them to keep the 14th day of the month of Adar, and also the 15th day of the same, year by year, as the days on which the Jews got relief from their enemies, and as the month that had been turned for them from sorrow into gladness, and from mourning into a holiday. And they should make them days of feasting and gladness, days for sending gifts of food to one another and gifts to the poor. So the Jews accepted what they had started to do and what Mordecai had written to them. For Haman the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews, had plotted against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast pur, that is, cast lots to crush and destroy them. But when it came before the king, he gave orders. This is just recap, by the way. He gave orders in writing that his evil plan that he had devised against the Jews should return on his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. Therefore, they called these days Purim, after the term pur. Therefore, because of all that is written in this letter, and of all that they faced in this matter, and of what happened to them, the Jews firmly obligated themselves and their offspring and all who joined them, that without fail they would keep these 2 days according to what was written and at the time appointed every year, that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, in every clan, province, and city, that these days of Purim should never fall into disuse among the Jews, although Brian relays that now it's completely different, like funky, weird, yeah, which I didn't know, you didn't know, but now we know they did fall into disuse, which is a bummer, nor should the commemoration of these days cease among their descendants. Then Queen Esther, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Jew, gave full written authority confirming this second letter about Purim. Letters were sent to all the Jews, to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus, in words of peace and truth, that these days of Purim should be observed at their appointed seasons, as Mordecai the Jew and Queen Esther obligated them, and as they had obligated themselves and their offspring with regard to their fast and their lamenting. The command of Queen Esther confirmed these practices of Purim, and it was recorded in writing. Okay, a lot there, but what we want to boil it down to is that we need to remember the Lord's faithfulness. This is what they're doing. They're saying, hey, never forget, right? This was their darkest moment. This was everything. I mean, we read the story and we're like, okay, I know it ends well. They didn't know what was going to happen. This is incredible. They were all going to be annihilated, all of them. This is so dark. And we went through, the history of God always has a rescue for his people, and God always saves his people. But they didn't have all that history. They had to trust the Lord, and really the Lord obviously brought in his people to save them. And so I want you to think about, we're not going to answer out loud because time is time, but I want you to really be thinking about this, and this maybe is your takeaway. So if you're like, I don't know what you just said about plunder and Jews and Gentiles, and I don't know about all that, I don't like your stabbing thing, but this, so take this with you. In what ways, because there's more than one, have you seen God's faithfulness, protection, and provision? In what ways? Sometimes we forget, right? What are some ways? And I want you to be thinking about that, and that can be your homework for the week. Because often we go, oh, I forgot about this one, and I forgot about that one, and I forgot about this one. In what ways have you seen God's faithfulness, protection, and provision? Let's talk about Esther's legacy real quick. What's cool here is it says Esther, the daughter of Abihail. Women typically at the time and in the Bible are not given there's no father's name, there's no parent's name, and so she's honored in that. She's this special figure in that, and she's somebody who has a legacy. Really interesting. If you want to go read Nehemiah chapter 2, this is a little bit of conjecture, and I didn't come up with this, but in Nehemiah 2, Nehemiah wants to go back and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, and it says that he came before the king and the queen, but it uses a different name for queen. That's not the typical name for queen, and just for some complicated reasons I won't get into, it's unlikely that the actual queen would be at this place with the king in court and all. And so what some scholars think is that this actually the king's mother. We call it the queen mother. It's the queen mother. And for this king, the queen mother would be Esther. And so some people think the queen, and why did he mention the queen? And then he says, I want to go back to my people in Jerusalem. And some scholars think that he said this because he knew the queen would say, yes, son, let him go build the walls. These are also my people. Therefore, they're also your people, and let him go back. And so we don't know that. That's not 100% for sure. But really just a cool ending when we look at she very likely went on, and the Lord continued to use her for the good of her people. Okay, let's read the end here. Chapter 10 is just kind of a closing. There's not a ton of content to it, but it says the king Ahasuerus imposed tax on the land and on the coastlands of the sea, and all the acts of his power and might, and the full account of the high honor of Mordecai, to which the king advanced him. Are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? Not a book we have in the Bible, but saying that they were true events that were written down. For Mordecai the Jew was second in rank to King Ahasuerus, and he was great among the Jews and popular with the multitude of his brothers, for he sought the welfare of his people and spoke peace to all his people. Why a tax? Why is that mentioned? Some people think it's, some scholars go, oh, that's weird. Why just mention a tax out of nowhere? Some people think, hey, the king is on the throne and he's actually doing what's right. Where Haman wanted to bribe the king into wealth, he's now doing what's normal, which is he gets wealth through taxation. And so order has been restored. The king is doing his job is what some people would say, why that's kind of randomly there about tax. So it closes out. And it closes out by reminding us, hey, the Lord raised Mordecai to this place of honor where the people in power, everybody was afraid of them. Now Mordecai comes in, people are afraid of him, but what's the result? Is that people join the people of the Lord. And what's the result? People protect the people of the Lord. So the fear of the godly man Mordecai has this godly result. The fear of the ungodly man Haman has this ungodly result. And so we're all throughout the book, we're contrasting these two men, and it concludes that way. So let me just recap some of the things that we've seen. I'm not going to go over these. I just want to mention them again. Some of the things that we've seen throughout Esther. Some of you were here the whole time. That's awesome. Some of you weren't. Here you go. You can just get this. Number one, the Lord honors women beyond their utility. We talked about the sexual servitude of these women in the beginning, and the Lord obviously is honoring women beyond anything that the world, especially the ancient Near East, would honor them with. The Lord moves beneath circumstances in ways we do not fully see, right? We call the whole thing God's silent sovereignty. We do not know what God is always doing. We don't always know what he's up to, but then we see the result always comes out in his faithfulness. God puts people in place to accomplish his purpose. Not always his people. Sometimes his enemies he puts in place to accomplish his purpose. And we see that here, even with Haman, even with Ahasuerus, who's a bit of a fool at times. We see him use these people, as well as Esther and Mordecai, clearly for his purpose. Being raised to favor. I can't see the back, so I hope I'm on the right slide because it's way too small for me. It's probably too small for you. Being raised to favor or prominence comes with a target and a risk. So if you're like, I really want this position, well, the world might put a target on your back based on that position, but the Lord is faithful. The Lord works through seemingly mundane circumstances. We saw him work through, the rolling of a dice. We saw him work through insomnia, as well as through those who do not recognize him, right? He can work even in those who don't even know him at all, but he's still using them for his purpose, even through sin and foolishness. All right. The Lord has always protected the Jews from their enemies, and we know that he will continue to do that. And we know that now that we are his people, he will continue to protect us as well. Probably the most important thing I want you to see is that Esther and Mordecai point towards the coming king. We said that Esther is willing to risk her life, whereas Jesus was willing to fully give his life, knowing that it would be taken. We talked about Mordecai going from a humble place to a powerful place, and we see that his enemies fear him, but for their good if they will join him. That sounds like Jesus. His enemies fear him now, but it will be for their good, and they have an open opportunity to join them, and his people are represented by him, so that as he rises to honor, they all rise to honor, and as he conquers, they conquer. Okay. And last, we saw that Brian's presentations look better than Andrew's, but Andrew uses more silly voices. So you choose which of those is most important to you. All right. I was going to ask you, I don't know why I think time will go faster than it does. I was going to ask you your reflections on Esther. We don't really have time for that, but we love you so much. But be thinking, right? There's a lot in this book. There's actually a ton. It's not very long, 10 little chapters. There's so much here. And so I would ask you, especially if you've been here throughout the whole thing, reflect on, what did the Lord show me? How do I see him bigger? How do I see my life circumstances differently? Do we have time, Romulo, or what do you think? You shrug? I say, I don't know. If you have kids, obviously, go get them. If you don't want to, they'll be fine. And yeah, well, I think we're good. Yeah, let me pray and we're good.